Well, hello everybody. Today is Wednesday, August 21st, 2019, and we are recording our live class in our Accelerated Growth Intensive program. We still have a few people getting on, but I decided to just get started because we're not going to do our round robin right away today. We're going to get started and go through the material, and then we're going to do our round robin kind of more closely to the end. So I just want to welcome you all, and I think we still have a few people getting on, but we have quite a few people on so far. So we're going to just go ahead and get started. You're all on mute for now, and then we'll be doing a round robin as we get towards the end. So our review of where we are now, our agenda today, we're going to I see it says 1, 2, 1. I always notice my errors, sort of once I'm doing it. So we're going to start with sort of a review of where we're at so far, and I say here help with puzzles, but you're really not going to get help with your puzzles today, but you might get some theoretical help. You're not going to get much practical help, but when we get to the Q&A, you can ask a little bit if you're having any struggles with your puzzles. Then we're going to talk about your abundance log, and at the end, we're going to be doing Q&A. So for your round robin today, really I'm going to go around the room and I'm going to ask you questions, more so than I'm going to ask you to give an update. Probably next week I'll go back to having you give an update. So for now, you're off the hook on giving an update, and you can pass if you don't have any questions. But I guess one thing I'm going to ask you to do is, as we're going through the class today, think about any questions you have, write them down, and then when we get to the round robin Q&A, I'll answer your questions. And in fact, I'll even write them down so that I can answer them for the people who are listening to the recording as well. So just kind of a snapshot on where we are in this 10-step accelerated growth process. I think most of you know that I'm evolving the program, and what I mean by that is I'm in a process of continuous improvement. So we have these 10 steps, but as I'm working with all of you on all of the steps, I'm learning things that need to be part of the program that I didn't originally put in the program, so I'm adding little bonus videos. So for those of you that see it's not 12 videos anymore, there's quite a few bonus videos on there. There's some extra information in the emails that come out, and sometimes we talk about extra things when we're on the phone, and all of that's going to be integrated into the next iteration of the class, and all of you that have already taken the class are all going to have access to the next version of the class too. So you're not going to ever miss anything. So I have step 6 here highlighted in green, because that's the step that we're on. So most of you now have done your trigger log. I've gone through a process of identifying your unmet needs, really understanding how important it is to get those needs met, worked on trying to get some of your needs met. Some of you have done an empowerment log, and then at the end of the class last week, I said, schedule a call with me and let's get your puzzle down. So we're going to talk about the puzzle today. So if there's anybody on the call going, wait, what's a puzzle? I don't have my puzzle done, then we'll talk a little bit about your puzzle. We're kind of at a turning point in the program now, which I would say the midway point. In other words, everything you've done till now is sort of gathering information to understand yourself better and get a very clear picture. And this sort of accumulates in your puzzle. So your puzzle should be this huge aha that explains a lot of things to you. And then the rest of the class is spent, from here on out, is spent on little by little actually changing your belief system so that you're not trapped by your puzzle anymore. So this is kind of a great midpoint of the class. And if you're behind, don't even worry about it. I have some people that are just starting the program now, and that's fine because you can get through it really quickly, and you're going to have ongoing support for this process if you're in the group program as well. So it'll be easy to catch up. So let's take a look at the puzzle. Everyone now should have a puzzle that looks something like this. And I have worked with, so there's about 12 of you in class. It looks like I have notes that for 8 of you the puzzle is done. So for 4 of you, the puzzle isn't quite done yet. 1 of you because you're just starting the process, so you're going to need a few weeks. A couple of you just because you haven't had a chance to talk to me on the phone yet. So we'll get to that for all of you in your own time. But for the 8 of you that have your puzzle done, and for those of you that don't have your puzzle done, this is what you have to look forward to. You're going to have a diagram that looks like this, but that talks about you and talks about unmet needs and identifies scarcity beliefs that lead to survival beliefs, that lead to survival strategies. And I have an example here. And so let's say you've noticed that your unmet need is to be valued. And a lot of people have said, hey, I have a lot of unmet needs. I can't just nail it down to one, and that's fine. And for many of us, we've put 3 or 4 unmet needs in the core here in their puzzle. It doesn't matter if you get your unmet need completely nailed because there are ways to get to it. But I'm only using 1 unmet need in this example to make it simple for you. So if my unmet need is to be valued, my scarcity belief will look something like I'll only be valued by others if I look like a success. That might be an example. But what you want to notice about this scarcity belief is it has a condition on it. So essentially, somewhere in your childhood, you realized that you couldn't get this feeling of being valued very easily, and you had to do something to get it. And in this example, the person said, well, you know, if I get a home run in baseball, then my parents will value me. If I get A's in school, then my parents will value me. So looking like a success became their survival strategy. It all comes from your scarcity belief, but your scarcity belief is like the rope on the elephant. You don't see it. So you're not going to be able to go, hey, Nahid, this is my unmet need and this is my scarcity belief. You're probably not going to be able to figure that out on your own. For those of you that have been on the calls with me, we've walked through a process and I've asked you a lot of questions and I've listened very carefully to things like your phraseology. So those of you that have been on the call with me, you might have heard me say, oh, and I heard you just say this, and you say, oh, yeah, I did say that, didn't I? And if you say it 2 or 3 times on the call as you're explaining things, then we can kind of pick up on some patterns that you might not pick up on your own because you're so used to talking the way that you talk. So what you're going to be most apt to be able to see visibly on your own is your survival strategy, because that's the thing you kind of do over and over and over again. So in this particular example, because this person feels like they need to look like a success to survive, because we need to feel valued to survive. Anything in our needs pyramid, we need to survive. So it feels like I won't survive if I'm not valued. So now it feels like since I need to look like a success in order to be valued, I won't survive unless I look like a success. And that's what drives your behavior patterns. The behavior patterns that you're trapped in, the reason that you're trapped in them is because you believe you won't survive unless you keep doing this thing. But the problem is you've forgotten the core of it and you just believe this to be true. So in this example, they have to look like a success to survive, to be valued. So their survival belief is at all costs, I must accumulate as many achievements as possible to prove that I'm a success, so that I look like success. And so what they do over and over is they work hard to accumulate visible achievements, but they never feel that they've achieved enough. And that's one clue for you that you're in survival strategy mode, because you can be successful at it and you can feel satisfaction at being successful for only a very short period of time, like a few minutes, and then you repeat it. So if you value accomplishment, then you accomplish things and you enjoy the accomplishment. You maybe revel in it a little bit even. And you know, it's just kind of fun for you. If you need to accomplish as part of your survival strategy, then you're feverishly accomplishing and you don't get any real lasting joy from any of your accomplishments. So that is a distinction. And that's something that can help you see whether or not you're in survival mode when you're doing certain things. So the difference between wanting to have a lot of friends and being likable and needing to make people like you in order to survive in the world would be this. If, you know, if you value friendship, if you value, you know, getting along with people, then you just enjoy getting along with people. But if there's somebody that you don't get along with, you kind of go, oh, well, you know, there's plenty of other people out there, and you just kind of turn away from them and you focus on the people that you do get along with. But if you need people to get along with you or to like you in order to survive, then when someone doesn't get along with you or doesn't seem to like you, you get a lot of anxiety surging through your body, and it becomes a survival situation where you feel like your very survival is threatened because this person doesn't like you. So, and of course the collateral damage is usually all the exhaustion that you feel doing the survival strategy. So, as I said, most of you have a puzzle complete. Those of you that don't worry, you'll get one. What I want to do next is say, well, what am I going to do with the puzzle? And the thing that's the most important to understand is you're doing this puzzle so that it all fits together and you can discover your scarcity belief, because your scarcity belief is the only belief that really needs to change in order for the whole puzzle to stop needing to stay intact. Okay? So this puzzle, the reason it's so powerful and so important is because it shows you why you have to do your survival strategy. And if your survival strategy is a negative behavior pattern, so mine was, you know, manage people, manage how people see me. It might be make people happy. It might be make people like me. It might be, you know, make people see that I'm perfect. It might be fight for myself or advocate for myself. It might be something else. But whatever it is, it might be get everything done. I'm trying to think of some of the ones that you guys came up with. Whatever it is, you can't stop doing that, which means you're never going to be able to stop doing this, and you're never going to be able to escape the collateral damage. So a lot of the things in your life that you've been wanting to change but can't change, they're either the collateral damage from your survival strategy or they're based on your survival strategy itself. Another thing that came up is people say, I have a lot of unmet needs. Some of your unmet needs are actually part of your survival strategy. So when you're first doing this, if you're this person, you might not get to my unmet need is to feel valued right away. What you might get to is I need to achieve. I need to have achievements. That's the first thing that's going to feel really important to you. So you're going to have an unmet need for achievement, and everything's going to follow. We had a few people that had that first. But the way that you can figure this out is if I achieve, what is it that I hope will happen, that I kind of hope against hope will happen? And in this case, the person is achieving and achieving because they hope that if they achieve enough, people will truly value them. And so that's how you can kind of use your survival strategy to help you understand kind of what's your real core unmet need. And then everything will start connecting at that point, once you start connecting your survival strategy to your unmet need, because you'll kind of see what the condition is, right? Because basically, your survival strategy is acting out your condition. So your survival strategy can help you see the other pieces of the puzzle. And they all build on each other. But if you think about it, your scarcity belief explains the why. It says this is what's going on in the world, this is the situation. So this explains your perception of the situation. Your survival belief says what needs to happen in order for me to survive. It's kind of like this is my objective. And then your survival strategy becomes your strategy. This is what I'm actually going to do to make sure that I meet my objective, which is my survival belief. So I need people to see that I'm a success. That must happen. My survival strategy is how I'm going to see them as a success. So I was just looking at somebody's puzzle, and they were saying people need to see me as perfect. So what they might want to put for their survival strategy is this is the kind of thing that I do to make sure that people see me as perfect. And so That's how we kind of hone your puzzle down and get it to something that really feels nailed down. But the whole purpose, the transition from this to your next step is you are trapped in this behavior pattern by this belief system. So you're trapped in this behavior pattern by this belief system. If you want to change this behavior pattern, you need to change this belief system. And very specifically, you need to change this one belief. Well, what's really good about this belief that I've just actually recently seen as a pattern since I've started working with a lot of people is it's typically always a condition. So it's always, I can't get this thing that I need to survive unless this condition, whatever it is. So for those of you that are confused, or even if you're not confused, this might even clarify things, I have some things here that you can do to identify your condition or to help identify your condition. So what you can do is write a sentence that says, this is scarce for me. So love, appreciation, being valued, certainty is scarce for me because the world is an unpredictable place, right? Appreciation is scarce for me because people won't appreciate me unless I work really hard to earn it, to earn their sense of regard or whatever it is, right? So here's two examples. Love is scarce for me because I'm not very attractive. Acceptance is scarce for me because I have to do something amazing to be worthy and deserving of it. So here are some other things that you can do to just logically mess around with, kind of what's my scarcity belief, what's my need, because getting it to a place where you feel like it's good enough to move to the next step is where you want to be now. Okay, so typically your conditions are going to be something that you have to do, right? So I have to earn or deserve it in some way by doing something, or you can't trust others, so you're in this alone. So there's a few people that are like, I can't trust others, so I'm in this alone. So there's that kind of a condition too. So the reason I can't is because this is the way the world works, or this is the way other people work. So let's move on to what we're going to be doing next once you identify your condition. So once you're going to identify your condition, what you really have to do is begin to prime your brain so that you actually are willing to reconsider your scarcity belief. So one thing that we talked about earlier is that your scarcity belief is so invisible to you, just like the elephant's rope, that once it's become a belief, you don't ever consider it again. And your brain sees no reason to reconsider something that it already believes is the truth. So in the beginning, what will happen is you will keep forgetting what your scarcity belief is, and you'll keep becoming unmotivated to really think about it that much. You'll get distracted or wrapped up in other things. So what we have to do next, once you've got your puzzle, once you're feeling pretty sure about your scarcity belief, is you have to prime your brain. And the way we prime the brain is we appeal to it, right? Because the brain is just trying to survive. So we basically say, it's worth looking at again. This belief that I made up is worth reconsidering. Maybe it's not the truth. And if it's not the truth, our life might be a lot easier. It's almost like you're having a conversation with your inner brain. But, the things to think about and to really just tell yourself, it's like having a conversation with yourself. Look at your scarcity belief. So those that have done your puzzle, I've had you write your scarcity belief down on top of a piece of paper. And then I've said, you came up with this belief when you were very young, small, powerless, and did not have a lot of perspective or information. So the whole representation of the world was your core family. You had no ability to put yourself in the shoes of the adults and the people that were bigger than you in your family because you didn't know what it was like to be an adult. So the only perspective you had was your own, and you were only a few years old. So there's really no way you could have come up with a belief at that time that would have served later in life if the world was different. But one of the assumptions you make as a child is that the world works the way the small world that you were born into works, which makes sense. So the real conversation you're having with yourself is, this belief made a lot of sense. You first validate your own belief. It made a lot of sense when I was a little kid. I was small, I was powerless, I was dealing with my family dynamics, and those people, most of them were a lot more powerful than me, and so that's very different than my life now. I don't live with my core family anymore. I'm an adult. I have access to tons more information about the world, things I've learned since I was a little kid. But I also have access to very different types of people and personalities, and I have a lot more choices. I have a lot more power than I did before. So we really kind of want you to go through this questioning. At the time that you made the belief your core family was your only frame of reference to represent the world, what if other people are different? What if there were a way to get you what you need without the condition? Would it be worth exploring? And so the way to prime your brain really is, what if I didn't have to work so hard to feel valued? What if I didn't have to work so hard to be accepted? What if I didn't have to work so hard to be loved? Wouldn't it be worth at least exploring? We're going to take this slow. The next step is not to force yourself to change your belief. The next step is just to see if your brain is interested and intrigued enough to be willing to get curious. So that's really your next job, is to prime your brain, to get your brain curious, to start thinking to yourself, what if I didn't have to do this? What if I didn't have to do this in order to get love? What if life were easier? And your brain's all about life being easy. So I know I'm acting like you're talking to your brain and you're two different people, but I think it's the best way for me to explain it. All right, so I have 3 questions that I ask you to help you get started looking for evidence. So once you decide that it's worth reconsidering the scarcity belief, then the rest of this time, I'm going to have you gathering evidence, bringing it back to our calls, and sharing whatever evidence you're comfortable sharing on the calls. So the idea is you have got to gather enough evidence so that your brain actually makes a decision that the belief that you had before actually isn't the whole truth, and decides on a new truth. And you're only going to do that by making observations and basically relearning what it takes in this world to get those needs met. And that is a process. It's not going to happen right away, but it's not going to happen at all if you don't do it deliberately. So I've given you 3 initial things to look at. The first is to pay attention to other people who have an abundance of whatever it is. So we'll take our example, people who are very valued in the world, okay? Let's come up with some people that are very valued in the world. Are they valued in the world only because they look like a success? And if it seems yes to you, then see if there are any exceptions. So if it seems like the only people in the world who are valued are those that look like a success, see if you can find some exceptions to the rule that you set in your brain. Are there any people out there that are very valued but don't, quote unquote, look like a success? And if you can find those exceptions and write them down, that's going to be the beginning of some evidence that you can offer your brain supporting the idea that there might be a better way to get your needs met. Maybe this thing that you're looking for is more abundant after all. Second, pay attention to what makes you decide to give this to others. So when you value others, do you only value them because they look like a success? Or do you value them for other reasons? And if you ask what makes you value other people, you know what makes you value other people. And if you don't place the same condition on other people that you're placing on yourself, that's some more evidence, and you write it down. The other thing that you can do is look at times in your past when you've actually felt valued. And you can think back to those memories and say, did this person value me because I looked like a success? Or were there other reasons why these people valued me? So these are kind of the 3 core questions that can really help you get started on gathering evidence. And then sort of once you start the process and your brain starts getting excited, it will kind of accelerate on your own. You'll keep having new experiences, and you'll have new little ahas, and you can write them down, and it'll start accelerating. But what we have to do now is sort of get the process going. We have to get your brain interested in finding evidence. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to stop, and I'm going to do a round robin, but instead of giving an update, I'm basically going to ask you if you have a question about anything I just went over, and then I'll just answer the questions in order as they come up. And if you don't have a question, you can just pass. And I'm going to go in the same order that I always go in, because I have an attendance sheet, because there's too many people on the call for me to see who's here and who's not. And if someone doesn't speak up, I'll just assume that they're not here. I know there's a couple people I know for sure aren't here, but I'm going to go in this order: Angela, Patty, Sandra, Krista, Valerie, Karen, Erin, Nanor, Lucinda, Ava, Vicki, and Christina. Okay? So I'm going to turn off the recording now, and for those of you who are listening to the recording, I will be back soon to summarize any interesting answers. Okay, well, we are back. We had a wonderful round robin. I am going to try to remember some of the questions, and so I'm going to, in reverse order, because the most recent question was, well, what if I discover that, if I have to, let's say, work hard to be valued, but then I only value other people who work hard as well, and, what if my condition does apply to other people, right? And the way I answered that is, that might be the case. And so if that's the case, then that just means that we continue to look for other evidence as well. And it's really a whole process of exploration, right? Because your beliefs are your beliefs, and our job is not to challenge any of your beliefs, but if any of your beliefs are creating a situation where you have a negative behavior pattern that's really hurting you and making your life difficult, that would be the only reason to rethink a belief. And so the only belief that we really need to change is a belief that tells us that traps us in some way. And so that's why we're using the puzzle to discover just one belief, which is the scarcity belief. There's a lot of people that in the coaching world that talk about beliefs these days and say, oh, we can help you change negative beliefs, and, I'm not good enough, you should change that belief, and you should change this belief. But with all the research I've done and all the work I've done with people, I've realized that, beliefs are not easy to change. You can't just tell yourself, just as many of you said on the phone, you can't just tell yourself that something you've believed your whole life is not true anymore. You really have to go through a process of reconsidering. And so what I love about this model and what makes it so powerful is that it identifies one belief that causes a trap for you. And that one belief, if you can change that one belief, your whole life will change. You could always choose to change other beliefs later if you want, but this is the belief that will make the biggest difference. And so now what we're going to be doing from now through the rest of the course is working on not necessarily forcing a change, because you can't tell yourself that something isn't true if you believe it's true, but just opening yourself up to reconsider and the possibility that the conclusion you came to might not be the only way to look at things. And so really that's the only place that you are right now. And then that has to happen. You have to open your mind first to get through the rest of it. So what some of the other questions were, a couple of them were, you know what, I'm starting, but I don't see, I discovered my belief, and I realize how ingrained it is. Like, I realize that even though I see evidence that maybe other people don't have to jump through 50 hoops to get love, but I believe that I have to jump through 50 hoops to get love, that's not changing it. I still believe I have to jump through 50 hoops to get love, right? And that's okay. That is very common at this stage. You're just becoming aware of the belief as a belief. You haven't really had time to gather a lot of evidence. And all we're doing, you have to open your mind just to reconsider it. That's kind of phase one. Phase two is gathering evidence. And in the beginning, that evidence isn't going to be enough to convince you. You'll notice the shift when it happens because you'll feel it in your body. It'll be, oh, I don't have to do that anymore. And that's what it'll feel like. So I just got a question that said, can I please email those 3 questions to us? And what a great question, because we had your lesson email come through. And now some of you are on a little bit of a different schedule, but for those of you that all started at the same time, the email that came today actually has those 3 questions on it. And for those of you that started a little bit later, that email will come to you that has the 3 questions. And then if you don't get the email with the 3 questions on it, then you can screenshot it. So I can kind of go back and you can screenshot the questions, or you can send me an email and I'll give you the questions. But I will put the 3 questions up here so that anybody who wants to screenshot it now while I'm talking can do that. So thank you for that question. All right, what are some other questions that came up before we wrap up today? I think one of the things we emphasized is that if you don't have the need met, you're not giving it to yourself. So there are really 2 things you're going to be doing in conjunction with each other for the rest of the class. One is you're going to be gathering evidence to help you loosen your scarcity belief. But 2 is, in the safety of your own mind, you're going to start really working deliberately towards giving yourself the unmet need. So you have to understand that if you don't feel validated, you're probably not validating yourself. You're probably discounting or dismissing yourself or doubting yourself. If you don't feel a sense of confidence, it's probably because you're undermining yourself, right? If you don't feel loved, you're probably not giving yourself a lot of love. So this is time to, besides gathering evidence in your log about your scarcity belief, this is also the time to really actively kind of shower yourself with compassion and love and really value yourself and give yourself in the space of your own mind those things that you've been dismissing. So when we have an unmet need, number 1, we don't give it to ourselves. Number 2, we don't receive it from others. So you want to give it to yourself. And I had somebody tell me, yeah, I noticed that actually people do appreciate me and I block it. And so that's another part of what you're doing here. So this is part of the evidence building. Okay, well, this is a process. We're going to continue this process. We're holding your hand the whole way. I will post this recorded webinar on the main page. So everything you need is on the main page. And as I start making changes or adding new worksheets and stuff, I'll post links to those on the main page as well. So meanwhile, have a great week. If you are behind and you need to get a phone call on with me to do your puzzle, this is a good week to do it. If you have already done your puzzle and you have it and you're starting your abundance log, really that's all you need to do is start that process of priming your mind and starting to try to gather evidence. So that is your homework for next week. Let's go to the homework page. Homework. Make sure you have a puzzle that seems right to you. You can always create another one later. Schedule a call with Nahi to do this if you haven't already, because it's hard to create the right puzzle on your own. Begin your abundance log. Okay? I want you prepared with your abundance log in front of you and all the evidence that you've gathered, all the observations that you've made on the call for the call next week. And I'm hoping that some of you will be comfortable enough to share some of the things that you've gathered, because if you articulate some of the things that you've observed in the world and how it's affected you, it will help others, because a lot of you have the same things that you're working on. Okay? So thank you very much. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you again next week. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.